This is Lightning Power Lunch, presented by Reef Rum on the Lightning Audio Network with Dave Mishkin and Greg Linnelli.
Actually, rewatching the game the other night against Buffalo, I didn't mind our game, actually. I thought we played pretty well. We deserved to get points out of that game. It was a little, I guess, squirrely on how it came down to like the last minute, but there was a lot of good from that game. I didn't think the guys took their foot off the gas, so I was really proud of them for that. And now we just have one more against a big rival. So there's just a lot of underlying things at stake with this game, especially in the standings for both teams, but the impending tournament that's coming up in a few days. So it'll be interesting how this game plays out.
Hey, wait a minute. Was that Eric Erlinson trying to get in there, cut off?
Yeah.
I could tell he was trying to get that question in. Yes, he was. John Cooper leading off the show here. It's Power Lunch on Lightning Radio. Glad you're with us. I just had a little sandwich, partner. I was hungry before we came on. Yeah.
I waited. I kind of waited. I had a banana.
No, that can hold you over a little bit.
Yeah, that'll hold me over.
Hold you over a little bit.
I'm in the arena today. If you're watching
you
the video stream, you can tell. I had a Tampa General Hospital morning with Stella.
Good.
She'd not been to the hospital on a visit since December.
Really?
It's just, like,
is that long for her?
Well, yeah. I mean, it is. Yeah. Even during the season, usually I can get over there, but I'm not going to go when I'm sick. And the fans who've been regularly listening to broadcasts of the show know I have not had a fun season in terms of staying healthy. I'm healthy now, thankfully. And it's not just me. Chief was sick. Phil was sick. Steve Versnick battled something. I think you've walked the gilded path, though, my friend.
You know what it is? It's all the kids. I feel like I'm immune to it all.
You have the immune system of
whatever it is.
A highly contagious, virus. Like you are the like you are just unaffected by anything because you have it all in you, and
that's right.
You're unaffected by it. Anyway, so we went yesterday in the afternoon. We went this morning. I brought Stella to the skate. So we are here. It was an optional skate. John Cooper did meet with the media, decked in his Stadium Series gear, his swag. Again, if you didn't have the video, he had a Stadium Series hat. He had a Stadium Series jacket. But he is definitely looking ahead, I think, after tonight's game to the Olympics. And he referenced that. And who knows what we're going to get tonight. I mean, the Panthers had a huge win last night. They had lost 4 in a row in regulation. The Bruins are a team ahead of them, and they won. But even in that game, Greg, they had a 4-2 lead going into the third, and they couldn't win in regulation. So the Bruins got a point out of it. Panthers ended up winning in a shootout. So the Panthers, I mean, they need to go on the sort of a run that they went on after the All-Star break in 2023.
Sure.
They're out of the playoffs. They came out of the All-Star break, and they went on a crazy run to get in the playoffs. And then, of course, they went on a run in the playoffs and beat Boston in the first round, upset the Bruins, got to the Stanley Cup final. They're going to need a run like that, I think. So they're going to have, 25 games left after tonight's game. And they have a lot of ground to make up. So are they going to be – I think Paul Maurice said last night's game, we need to treat it as a Game 7. Is this another Game 7?
Yeah.
How healthy are they? Bennett is going to the Olympics. Bennett is a little banged up, though. And, apparently he left the game a little early yesterday. It's a back-to-back. Are the Lightning going to see Bobrovsky? He's getting 3 weeks off like Vasilevsky. But are they going to play Bobrovsky in a back-to-back the night after he just, went into the shootout? Are we going to see Daniil Tarasov? Panthers didn't come this morning, so we'll get some of these questions answered tonight. Coop did say it's going to be the same lineup for the Lightning that we saw against Buffalo. So we're going to see a line of Finley, Sabrin, and Douglas.
No doubt about it. And, we always have fun with how Florida's going to respond to having those guys line up. But I think that's in some ways by necessity, just based off of where the Lightning are with some injuries. And also, too,
at forward, they're short. I mean, they could go 7 defensemen, so Crozier's going to be out again. And they could pull one of those forwards out, but that's not what they're deciding to do.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
And that does mean that Brandon Hagel is in tonight. So let's see how the Panthers react to that. The Panthers drew the ire of Boston fans and even just people following the league. There were more plays last night's game. Did you see that Vilmanis, who is a Latvian player who's up from the minors. He's played 13
Yeah.
games this year. I mean, the Lightning have seen him because he played in some of the preseason games.
Sure.
Not the 322 penalty minute game, but he was in that game in Orlando. We've seen him the last couple of years. He's Latvian. He's going to the Olympics along with Balinskis. A couple of games ago, they both scored. It was the first time ever that two Latvian players had scored a goal in the same game. So that was their game against Buffalo.
Right.
But Vilmanis, who's not, I mean, in the minors, I don't think that he's known as a high penalty minute guy. He had a brutal check on McAvoy. I mean, so blatantly a hit to the head. And most people seemingly are like astonished. Well, most people expected and thought it should have been a 5-minute major. And the game misconduct. You got a 2-minute minor. And people are just like, how is this possible? That was early in the game. McAvoy was able to return, thankfully for him, because he's going to the Olympics.
Yeah.
But, again, this is a guy that doesn't really have the reputation of being a player like that.
That gets contagious.
That was
by the way.
headhunting.
Yeah.
That's what it was. So we're going to see that again from the Panthers tonight as it relates to Brandon Hagel.
Yeah, so
We're going to have to wait and see.
The right answer to that is we don't know. I mean, we know that. This game could... I think this game is, and you're right. I mean, that I'm looking at this replay right now.
Yeah, you found the replay.
That player, he kind of, so people are going to look at that and say he left his feet. I mean, he kind of propels himself because I think the momentum allows him to, so that looks, but he absolutely gave him the elbow.
He raised his elbow.
Yeah.
I mean, if your elbow is plastered to your chest, somehow you hit the guy in the head, that one is a little bit more, I mean, it can be a little bit more gray if you have a height advantage, like the Tom Wilson hit that actually, you and I didn't talk about it, but he hit Logan Stankoven in a game over the weekend. The Capitals played the Hurricanes. There was no penalty. I don't think there was a penalty called on the play. And, I mean, he absolutely blew up Stankoven behind the net, but it was a hit to the head.
Yeah.
Wilson has a height advantage on Stankoven, and Wilson delivered the check. I mean, if I'm remembering right, it's not like he led with his elbow. Like his arm was plastered against his body, but he propels himself into Stankoven and he hits him in the head. Okay? Is the height difference a mitigating factor here in favor of Wilson? In other words, like the fact that he is bigger is not held against him, right? And in some ways, maybe it should be, right? Like if you're hitting a smaller player and you're hitting him in the head, you shouldn't be doing that. I don't know. This one is not that at all. Vilmanis goes out of his way to lead with his elbow. It's a little bit like the Jones play on Hagel.
So he should be
suspended. In the last meeting between the teams here in Tampa.
That's a suspension. As far as I'm concerned.
A 2-minute minor. I think the Bruins reacted and they were shorthanded.
I don't
out of that sequence.
So we talk about like games and policing games and how the players police themselves. The officiating, I think, oftentimes allows these things to escalate. I'd rather be in a game like this, the official take control, and if that means you throw somebody out rather than it leads to something like this, that's atrocious in terms of not only the hit, but what was called or not called. By the way, did you also notice, because I just happen to be browsing now, that Tanner Jeannot and Greer fought in that game? Will be interesting to see if Greer, I mean, because they've asked Greer to dance. And listen, there aren't many people in the league who are tougher than Tanner Jeannot.
Right.
In other words, Sabrin can fight, Douglas will go, but would you call them in the same level as Tanner Jeannot? No rhyme intended there, which it did.
Tanner Jeannot can handle himself, as
Tanner
you say.
Jeannot. So I think Tom Wilson. So Ryan Reeves, a lot of people still have him there at the top. Who's the
Olivier?
Olivier's there. Olivier's there for sure.
Rempe got.
I don't think Rempe's a great
in a
fighter.
Well, he's big, certainly, but
he's
prior
big.
to getting injured in the fight with Reeves, I mean, I think that he was feared.
Who's the player that knocked Sabrin out from Montreal?
Jack Guy.
I mean, he's tough.
He's tough. Yeah.
So what I'm saying is there's the Jeannot's in that top 5. That's all I'm going to say. I think
Right.
he's.
I don't think he fights as much as some of these other players, and it may just be that people aren't.
I don't people want to fight.
He's
him.
not looking to fight.
No.
Maybe like some of these guys maybe are kind of looking to, send a message or whatever. Jeannot will fight, but I don't feel that Jeannot fights as much as some of these other guys. He didn't fight a lot when he was with the Lightning, but when he fought, he was a very capable fighter, for sure.
No doubt.
By the way, here were the penalties from that Vilmanis hit. Vilmanis got 2 minutes for an illegal check to the head, but not more than 2. Then Jonathan Aspero, who's McAvoy's D partner, got a 2-minute minor for roughing against Vilmanis, so he reacted. And the Boston bench got an unsportsmanlike conduct penalty. So the Panthers, after that hit, which most people looking at it would say, that looks like more than a minor. It's a major and a game and maybe a suspension. The Panthers ended up getting a power play out of that. I don't believe they scored on it. They didn't. But that's a tough one. If you're Boston coming out of that Lightning game where they felt unhappy about the officiating anyway. Now, the Bruins did end up getting some power plays. 7. So I'm actually looking at them. So the Panthers went 2 for 2 on the power play. That's not right because they had that one in the first period.
Here's a more.
Yeah, that can't be right. The power play numbers aren't right. But the Bruins went 1 for 7. So the Bruins had some power plays in this game. And they tied the game in the third period with a power play goal. Anyway,
so this is a topic.
The question was really about, are the Panthers going to target Hagel? And the answer is we don't know.
Now, if you want to go based off of history, what would the answer be? Yes.
Yes.
Based off of history. That's what we're going off of this year and late last year. Here's an interesting question for you and for our audience. It may be a moot point anyways. And it's not because of the Olympics coming up. It's for the reasons you just gave. And this goes against everything an NHL player is about, and particularly Hagel, who is as fiery a guy as you will meet when he's on the ice.
Yeah.
Do you think there is any consideration, would you give any consideration of sitting him tonight?
Well, John Cooper just said it's the same lineup.
It's the same,
so
but take that away. But this is more of like us and our audience, knowing that the Lightning, have some serious injuries at forward. We do know Hagel has had a history with the Panthers. It is a game that means more for Florida than it does Tampa Bay, and you are going to have the Olympics coming up again. I think that's more secondary. This is just more about like, would you just shut him? And you'd say he's day-to-day with something.
Right.
To protect him, because to your point, I don't know what Florida's going to do, but what I can tell you is they've been sneaky and deliberate in targeting Hagel. It hasn't stopped when we thought it was going to stop, mainly because I don't think anybody from Florida has answered the call, so to speak, to kind of like end it. And maybe they're waiting for Hagel to drop the gloves with Ekblad or Greer. I don't know who, but if it's one of those two guys, I mean, I don't think Hagel should have to answer for that. But if they do, is that what it's going to take for this thing to end?
I don't know. I mean, we may have a nothing game tonight, too. We'll see. I mean, the bottom line is the Panthers, if they are going to get into the playoffs, they absolutely need points at every opportunity. Now, you might say, well, they can afford to take penalties against the Lightning because the Lightning's power play is completely turned into a pretzel and completely unravels when they go on the power play against the Panthers' penalty kill. So maybe the Panthers aren't worried about taking penalties. I mean, they did go 6 for 7 apparently last night on the kill against the Bruins, which definitely helped them. But although they gave up the goal in the third period, up 4-3, they needed that penalty to be killed. They couldn't get the job done. We'll talk about it tomorrow, Greg. I mean, look, I don't think you're going to go to Brandon Hagel and say to him, you're healthy. We need you because we're shorthanded at forward. I mean, look at the minutes that he's played the last couple of games. You know, up over 25 minutes a game. You're going to play on the top line. You're going to be on the top power play. You're going to be one of our first penalty killers. You're going to be out there 6-on-5. You're going to be out there 5-on-6. Like, you're one of our main guys. You're healthy. But we're worried that the Panthers are going to target you again, so we're not going to play you. I mean, that's just not really the way it's done, even though he's got this tournament coming up, which is one of the first things that I mentioned about McAvoy. Like, you see McAvoy get hit like that, and he, like, left the ice. He left for a little while. I mean, he ended up playing over 22 minutes in a game that, went into overtime. So, I mean, he played a fair amount. But, part of it is he going to be able to play in the Olympics? So
Thomas says, how worried are you about Hagel being targeted? I mean, I think it's a
well,
concern.
We're mentioning it.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's a concern.
You can't play this game in fear, though. You can't.
I don't think
so.
I don't think we're saying it was more of a hypothetical with John Cooper and strategically just being like, look, we're dealing with a lot of injuries, and it sounds like the Florida Panthers, they really don't care. They will go over the line, and they've done it to you. So the question just becomes, I think Hagel obviously is going to be in. If you're him, your head's got to be on a swivel.
Yeah.
Your head's got to be on a swivel. Because I don't think you're going to...
This is different than the final preseason game where both teams held out players. That game didn't matter. This game does matter.
Yeah, I would say, especially, like if the Lightning are up late in a game, particularly by multiple goals, and things can get shippy, I wouldn't play Hagel. I think there's ways you can do it.
Agreed, yes.
And I actually, but I wouldn't, like there's maybe a suggestion you put Sabrin on a line with Hagel and have him protect him the whole, I don't know you do that. Maybe you do that once in a while. I just don't see Hagel playing between Douglas and Sabrin. You know what I mean? Like, to have him. Now, if you're one who believes in policing and having enforcers on the ice prevent these things from happening, let's see if that's the case tonight.
Right.
Let's see if that's the case.
And who's going to be able to play for the Panthers? Like, they have their own injury issues.
How many people are out for them?
It's possible. So they are not at the morning skate because they played last night.
Right.
It's possible that they will give, I don't know. I just looked. Bennett played nearly 23 minutes last night. Bennett left the game a couple of games ago. So let's see if he's going to be able to play a lot tonight. They do have other guys, though, that are a little bit more questionable. I mean, they didn't play Boquist last night. They didn't play Luke Cunnin last night. I did see Bob Wischusen and Ray Ferraro this morning, and I don't know where Ray got this information, but he's like, I understand the Panthers are going to be, are not going to be able to play some of the players that played last night. I don't know if they were battling injuries or they got hurt last night. We'll see what the lineup looks like for the Panthers. I just come back to this point. More important than any kind of retribution, continued retribution that they feel they need to exact on Brandon Hagel, way more important than that for the Panthers is 2 points. Now, some people might say for the Panthers, the two go hand in hand. Like they needed 2 points against the Bruins, and they played the sort of game that, we often see them playing to the tune of, hitting a guy in the head and being shorthanded 7 times. But I don't know. I mean, I think that I am ready for something to go off the rails tonight, but I'm not expecting it.
Yeah.
And maybe that's foolhardy of me.
We'll
talk about it tomorrow, and we'll come out of that game and be like, yeah, this was kind of a nothing burger, or this was really ugly. I mean, listen. And now we got some question marks about potential Olympians. The Panthers have 10 guys going to the Olympics themselves.
Yeah. I think this game could get out of control. We don't know. The Lightning have their best lineup out there in terms of people willing to embrace the craziness.
Yeah.
You've got 2 guys who can throw them, and I don't think have any problem doing it. The question is, are you also going to just address it at the beginning of the game, or is this going to happen organically?
Mm-hmm.
And that remains to be seen. But I think there are ways you can protect Hagel to a degree, and that would be late in a game. I think both ways. If the Lightning are getting blown out, or if the Lightning are blowing out the Panthers, there just might be this, let's just sit on the bench for a few minutes here, and let's see how it goes.
The Lightning are going to see Matthew Tkachuk for the first time this year. He's going to play his 10th game. So he is back and playing regularly. And in case you're wondering, here are the 10 Olympians on the Florida side, not including like management or anything like that.
Right.
Tkachuk is playing for USA. 3 Canadian Olympians, Marchand, Reinhart, and Bennett. Forsling's going to Sweden. Well, playing for Sweden. Mm-hmm. The Finns are Lundell, Luostarinen, and Nico Mikkola, and then the 2 Latvians that I mentioned, Balinskis and Vilmanis. So that's 10. And of those players, unless I'm mistaken, I think all 10 of them are going to play tonight.
Yeah.
So I don't think
fair.
any one of those 10 wants to sustain an injury and miss the Olympics. So depending on how nasty this game gets, we'll see.
Jake says the McAvoy hit last night was awful. Hopefully this isn't an indication of how tonight is going to go. Win or lose tonight, I just hope nobody gets hurt. Isn't that interesting how that is what most people are taking from these two playing? That I hope nobody gets hurt, which is more of a knock on the officiating than it is on the Panthers playing over the line. Because if you start suspending guys or kicking them out of games for these over-the-line hits, maybe you start to think twice about doing it. I understand emotions play heavy in games like this. This is arguably the biggest rivalry in the NHL today. These are two teams who do not like each other. There is playoff experience between these two teams. I understand all of that. But I think it's probably even more reason for the officiating to get it under control. I don't mind fights. I don't mind a good hit. I mind when you leave your feet or get the elbow in a guy's head when he's not looking. I think we all are on that same page. Thomas says, I heard the FBI is opening a grand theft investigation against the Kings after that terrible trade. That was the other big news that hit yesterday.
You can go back and listen to yesterday's show. What I said was the only advantage that is kind of lining up for the Rangers, the number of teams that are potentially going to be buyers. But everything else was offset by, like, they had no control over where Panarin went because he had full control, full no move, and every other team knew that they were looking to move him, right? So I didn't actually see this, but Steve told us this, so I'm going to take this as the gospel. The Kings absorbed the entire salary. So what would have added more to what the Rangers got in return? Potentially, if they had picked up, as we had talked about, 50% of the salary, but they didn't have to do that. The Kings said, no, we'll take the whole thing. So Panarin approved of that deal, but probably what you're looking at, there may have been some teams that were willing to offer more, but Panarin didn't want to go there. What are you going to do if you're the Rangers?
What's interesting about this...
there's only so much a team can do if, they had no juice in this deal. So they got what they could get. If Panarin rejected the deal to the Kings, where were they going to, eventually he would have said, okay, fine, I don't want to stay in New York, but it may have been the best deal that they could get. Other teams couldn't give Panarin what he wanted in terms of an extension. Do you see what he got?
So he got $11 million. So I'm curious.
2 years, yeah.
2 years. So I'm curious to see if the Lightning made an offer.
But the Lightning wouldn't have been able to offer $11 million for 2 years.
No,
meaning
that's
$11 million each year, $22 million.
Yes, that's what I mean. I think, I think the prospect side, the Lightning could have done. I think because it sounded like Greentree might have been their best prospect, so that goes back to the Rangers, and there was a conditional draft pick. You and I know about conditional draft picks in general. Those are kind of just let's
getting a pick.
Beef it up.
It's conditional and may go higher depending on how the Kings do in the playoffs.
So the big thing there obviously was a prospect going back. It was their best prospect. But as far as I'm concerned, if you're comparing what the Lightning potentially could have offered, I think they had enough prospects and NHL-ready players and players who are currently on the NHL roster that the Kings would have been interested in. Now, maybe you would have had to part ways with a couple of those players. I think the issue then, to me, ends up being for $11 million, and maybe clearly Panarin didn't want anything lower than that. And the Lightning were like, look, we can sign you to a 3-year deal, but it's at $6 or $7 million.
By the way, I just looked it up. The Rangers did retain 50%. So erase what I said earlier.
Okay,
I should
so
have
there
looked
you
at
go.
this first.
No, that's okay.
They did retain 50%, and that was baked into what they got back.
It sounds like this is the contract. He got $11 million per year.
Right. It was the contract. The Kings could make that work. Most teams couldn't give him $11 million, even with the cap going up next year.
No. So
the Kings could. And look, he's going to he likes big cities. He wanted to
go to
New York. He's
weather.
going to L.A., and L.A. needs a guy with some scoring pop because they're a great defensive team.
That's a good move by them. I don't know.
It's a good move by the Kings.
I don't know if Panarin. Look, he's still a really good player. I don't know if he's. I mean, does he immediately become their best offensive player, even better than Kopitar up front? Okay, yeah. But I don't know at 34 if he is the game breaker he was at 30. Like, it improves the Kings dramatically, no doubt about it. But how much is it moving the needle for them? In terms of a guy who
were willing to make this trade, clearly.
Enough. I think it also speaks to the Kings' barren system, or at least potentially, they don't have much offense. I mean, not only here, but you just gave a 34-year-old a 2-year contract at $11 million per year.
But the 2 years gives them, like, on some level, that's low risk because they aren't locking themselves
for a 6-year contract
into a long-term deal. And if the money can work for them, good for them. I'm looking at their overall, roster situation. So, Kopitar's retiring after this year. So that's $7 million coming off the books. They're giving a fairly substantial raise. They're basically doubling Kempe's salary next year. So he's getting an extension.
He's a really good player.
But most of their other players, are already under contract. So there aren't a lot of raises coming here.
So they could be active in free agency.
Kuzmenko is a UFA. If they decide to bring him back, he makes 4.3. I'm not sure that he would command a lot more than that at this point. The two guys that are getting raises next year are Kempe and then Panarin because they're paying half of his salary, and it's not quite doubling next year. So,
well, they may be active in free agency to upgrade their offense too, if they have that much cap space to work with. So that may make sense. And that's how they're going to have to probably inject some offense into that lineup.
Yeah.
So, okay. Hey, good move by LA.
Them and
good
move
move for LA. Heck yeah.
And the Rangers got the deal done before the roster freeze, barely. But now they can move on to maybe making some other deals if that's what they decide to do. This was the one that they needed to move this guy, though.
Well, and I think you're going to see some other players.
Something for him.
And I think you're going to see more players go now after Panarin leaves.
Yeah.
Because now that was the big chip. Now, does Trocheck go? Does Zibanejad go? We'll see. Jim says, I got banned on the NHL Reddit for sharing anti-Panthers propaganda with a video montage of all their dirty hits since last year's playoffs, noting they've only had one suspension. It's unreal. It's definitely got the attention of the public.
Yeah, and it's not just the Lightning. The Lightning are not the only team on the receiving end of some of these Panther plays, let's say. The Bruins have been on the receiving end. The Rangers have been on the receiving end.
Yeah.
Carolina has been on the receiving end.
What do you make of that? Because some people will say they're taking on the personality of their head coach. You hear that in sports a lot.
Yeah, I don't know.
They're tough.
I mean, clearly it is part of kind of how they carry themselves. And again, like I mentioned Carolina, I'm trying to think of the plays against Carolina. I actually can't think of many, but I know Carolina fans don't like the Panthers too, because I've seen some emotional, comments from the Carolina side about how some of that is frustration because the Panthers have knocked them out in the semifinals.
Right.
2 of the last 3 years. I don't know. I don't know what to make of it, Greg.
Let's see here. I'm going to get to some more. So Wiz says he will be targeted likely. Cats can't let it go. He's talking about, obviously, Hagel and where that's going. Alan says, Dave and Greg, the Panthers game, I hope we can get through with no injuries, though it is nice to know that we have our enforcers, Douglas Sabrin and Lefty Vasilevsky. I don't think Vasi and Bobrovsky would drop it. Countrymen going at it. Do you think?
I don't think so.
I don't think they would.
Although
go back
they
to
both
back.
were involved in a fight recently. Because Bobrovsky fought Nedeljkovic.
Who's the better Russian fighter from the goaltender position? Vasi or
By the
Bobrovsky?
way, I know that this may not sit well with Lightning fans, but I'm going to say it anyway because I don't care. Congratulations to Sergei Bobrovsky. He just won his 450th game.
That's impressive.
Last night.
That is impressive.
The 8th goalie in NHL history to reach that milestone.
And obviously the winningest Russian goaltender at this moment.
For now, yeah.
For now, yes. Preface that by saying for now. Vasi,
How many did Nabokov finish with, though? I think you're right. I think he's the winningest. But
I'm going to spitball and say...
I'm going to look it up while you spitball.
You know what? I'll say he hit 300. I feel like
some
that's...
of those San Jose teams that he
played were really 353.
Good. Yeah.
Is he in the Hall of Fame?
So he's almost 100 behind Bobrovsky. So 353 is impressive, but he wasn't even in the ballpark of where
is he in the Hall of Fame?
is.
Should he be in the Hall of Fame? I mean, I feel like you probably should. 353 is pretty good. And he was one of the better goaltenders when he played. Would you agree, partner, in his prime? I mean, he was...
Yep. He had a hard time when the 1 year he was with the Lightning, which was the Vasilevsky rookie year.
Yeah.
And the problem was that he wasn't used to being a backup.
Yeah, and I mean,
he wasn't used to playing one out of every
that makes
10
sense.
days.
And that makes sense. Not everybody is. I mean, he'd gone from being the guy to... And I think he handled it well in terms of being a professional. I just don't think some guys... That's a hard adjustment to make.
Yeah.
You know? Michael says, good day to you both. Always a great day when we have a game tonight. Tampa Bay says, death, taxes, and Department of Panthers safety.
Well, the wise guys online and wise gals online too. I don't mean to target, men over women here, but there are some people who come up with some funny stuff.
Lucas, my neighbor. Now, this was, in fairness to Lucas, this was at 12:06, and maybe I should say in fairness to me, I did not see his comment. Cooper needs to protect his players and put Hagel in the press box. You can't risk it, and the NHL clearly doesn't protect players. I mean, that is a bold statement, but I don't think it's not untrue to an extent. I have told you multiple times on this show, I don't know if it's because the game is too fast. I don't know if it's because the equipment makes these injuries or these hits even worse than what they are had the equipment not been as bulky as Phil likes to talk about, partner. Mm-hmm. But there is no question we have seen over the years just disregard for players when it comes hits from behind, hits to the head. And it most of the time feels like the suspensions come up way short. Now, what was interesting, I don't know if you caught this, was a couple of games ago. I forget who he cross-checked. It was Brandon Hagel. Brian Rust. Late in a game, got an elbow to, and I forget who they were playing. And the NHL suspended him for 3 games.
3 games.
Now, let me tell you this. Brian Rust does not have a track record of being a dirty player. Could you have made the case that was a dirty play? Fine. You want to come down on hits to the head? You have to have some consistency, I think, with it, and it shouldn't be who the player is. Mm-hmm. They suspended him 3 games. I can tell you the hit we just saw last night with Florida in Boston, that was just as bad.
Yeah.
Just as bad.
Well, clearly there's no supplemental discipline because we would have heard about it by now because the Panthers play tonight.
Yes. So, Lucas, I understand where you're coming from on Cooper needs to protect his players. I also think we have to be logical and say that's just not what the NHL code is about. Players don't sit because they want to be safe. And I don't think coaches think that way. Now, the last game of the regular season, you see this in football, you see this in all sports.
Yeah.
If I can rest a player or two, we see more of that. But middle of the season, against your biggest rival, even if it's somebody they have targeted, it's just not in the NHL DNA of a player, is it?
No.
I don't think it is.
And I don't know if this is the right way of putting it, but if Brandon Hagel is healthy and he's one of your most important players, and you're saying we're not going to play him because we're afraid that the Panthers are going to target him and take cheap shots at him, and we're putting him in the press box, in some ways aren't you conceding the point to the Panthers?
I mean, that's the other flip side to it.
Yeah.
That's why it's not going to happen. The way you protect Brandon Hagel tonight is that you have Sabrin and Douglas ready to go at any moment. And towards the end of the game, I think if the game's out of control, you monitor it. I will tell you this. If the shenanigans happen with Brandon Hagel on the ice tonight, and Sabrin and Douglas are on the bench, I believe there's an automatic suspension for coming off the bench.
Yes.
I would say we'll pay your fine and your suspension, get off the bench, and go. I'm going to be very clear about that. If I see shenanigans, and really, let's make it any of our players get targeted, and Douglas and Sabrin, you're on the bench, what's the point of having those two guys on the ice then? Dress for a game. You want to hit Hagel, and we see Greer or any one of these Florida players who wants to take a run at some of the Lightning players, and it's a dirty hit, I need to see Douglas and Sabrin get off the bench and go. And if they get suspended for the whole year, you know what? Life in the NHL. I'm sure the Tampa Bay Lightning will take care of those two. And you know what? Probably earn more respect from the players in that instance. Eric Goddard, remember him? Big enforcer for the Penguins back in the day. He did that.
It's an automatic 10-game suspension.
It is. But I mean, at that point, so what? I'd be curious what our audience has to say. But do you remember the big brawl the Penguins had with the Islanders? It was everybody basically was thrown out of the game. And the goaltenders, it was Brent Johnson who pounded, I want to say it was DiPietro. It was like a legit, like Brent Johnson could fight. It was one of those goaltenders that like you didn't want to mess with.
Brent Johnson end up going to the Islanders? I think he played for the Islanders too.
I don't know. Anyways, the minute somebody challenged Brent Johnson, Goddard got off the bench to fight, and he was suspended. Basically, he was trying to protect his goaltender from going in. I hope it doesn't get to that point, but if we're going to get into the clown show tonight, then your two enforcers, who, let's face it, when everybody's healthy, they're probably, what, your 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th enforcer, forwards on the team. That's the time to use them, get off the bench, and let the officials then start throwing people out. So that's kind of where my mindset is. Anybody wants to know where Greg's mindset is tonight? That's my mindset. B-Love says, it's nice to see almost the entire Atlantic Division working together to keep the Panthers out of the playoffs.
Well, I'm not sure that that's really the way it's going in their head. But the reality is the top 5 teams in the Atlantic have been point munchers, and it's making it hard for the 3 teams below those top 5 to gain ground.
Which is why if the game gets out of control tonight in favor of Tampa Bay, you could see the Panthers and their frustration boiling over, because at this point, it is making it very difficult to climb over all of these teams. We're not talking about one. Multiple teams, you've got to get it going.
Let me just say, because I had it written down when I looked at their game-by-game reviewing the notes today. So coming out of the Olympic break, the Panthers play their first 2 games at home. They play the 2 teams the Lightning are seeing at home. They play Toronto, and they play Buffalo. The Lightning have both those teams here in Tampa, not in a back-to-back. The Panthers actually play them back-to-back. They play Toronto, and then they play Buffalo. And one of the fans had said the Buffalo Sabres have a back-to-back at Florida at Lightning. So you can figure out how that schedule is working.
Yeah.
After those 2 games, for the rest of the year, the Panthers only have 8 home games left. 4 sets of 2 games, like they play 2, 2, 2, and 2. And the last 2 are at home. 15 road games. So 15 of their final 23 are on the road, and because they play the last 2 at home, that means they have a stretch of 15 out of 21 on the road. And they're going to have to, no matter what happens tonight, and I will say no matter what happens in those first 2 home games coming out of the Olympic break, they're going to have to make up ground. If they get in the playoffs, they will be getting in the playoffs on the strength of a tremendous run where much of their heavy lifting is going to happen on the road. That is a tough schedule. They would rather be in like second place, right? Like force teams to catch them. They're going to have to make up ground.
Well, and how much gas do you have left in the tank in the first round? After you expend all that energy.
How much gas do you have in the tank just to do that, right? I mean, with the 3 deep runs.
That's kind of where we are.
That's where they've put themselves.
Yeah, and that's on them. So
that's where they are after 55 games.
Half their team will get a rest. there's obviously the Olympics. You pointed out they've 10 players
Right.
playing. They're going to have at least half their team though relaxing, so that makes some sense. But it's I don't know what the odds are. I'd love to see somebody do the percentages of Florida making the playoffs
Yeah.
and what that number is. B Love says, listen to High Note's block party interview, and he compared this rivalry to the Wings and the Avs when he played.
Yes.
Always look forward to these matchups. Much love from Charlotte.
That Wings-Avs rivalry was, that was
Nasty.
very nasty. And it started with a bad hit. Claude Lemieux hit Chris Draper
Wait, Claude
in
Lemieux?
the playoffs.
Claude Lemieux had a bad hit?
Which is funny because Lemieux didn't stay with the Avalanche. He was with them. I think they had a big brawl the next year, but he had moved on, I think. Look up how many years he... But that rivalry extended past that particular play with that particular player. Remember Dino Ciccarelli, after they lost the series, he was playing for Detroit. He's like, I can't believe I shook that guy's hand in the handshake line. That's where it was at.
Was it the following year that was it Draper who went right after Lemieux?
Yeah.
Kind of flies in.
That was the 95-96 season, and the Avs won the Stanley Cup. They beat the Panthers, actually. But they beat the Red Wings in the conference final. That was the year the Red Wings won 62. Well, I was wrong. Lemieux, I guess I didn't remember right. Lemieux was with the Avalanche for 5 years. So that basically extends through the time that the rivalry was extremely nasty. And it went a few years after that, too. Like, I remember they played in 2002. The Avs were the defending champs, and they were up 3-2. And the Red Wings won games 6 and 7, and then they went on to win the Cup. But Lemieux's first year with Colorado was 95-96, and he had that hit on Draper in the playoffs where he, cross-checked him. He was on his knees, I think, in front of the bench, so there's no glass there. It was just like the dasher, and that was it.
It was nasty.
There's no – if you get cross-checked into the dasher where there is glass, you're still going to hit the edge of the dasher. But I think he got checked with no glass, if I'm remembering right. But, it was dirty. There was no question. And he cross-checked him from behind. He,
there was blood.
It was
gushing
orbital
everywhere,
bone
right?
fractures. But, it was a
nasty.
very, very bad injury. And that was the fuse that was lit in terms of that one play. But remember, those were, if they weren't the two best teams in the West, they were two of the best teams in the West. Dallas was there, too, during that time. But you had two great teams, either of which could have won the Stanley Cup every year.
Yeah,
they were often playing in the playoffs.
Yep.
And you had this nasty hit that kind of started it, right?
And that's why people loved it, because it had that nastiness to it. Mm-hmm. And that's just kind of where it is. The side note with Claude Lemieux, I think
he was there 4 years. I correct myself. 4 full years. He was traded early in his 5th year.
What made him
But those 4 years were
intense,
white-hot rivalry between those teams.
What made Claude Lemieux so frustrating, he was a good player.
Yes.
He went over the line. Very rarely did you see him have to answer for those, though. He didn't, in other words, he wasn't a fighter, and I don't remember him ever really, he's had fights, but I think part of it was he just wouldn't drop the gloves.
In that era, so he eclipsed 100 penalty minutes 3 times in his career, and those 3 times, I'm sorry, I misspoke. During his time with the Avalanche, he eclipsed 100 penalty minutes 3 times. But in that era, you had some guys, I think, who were up around 200 penalty minutes. He was at 117, 115. Earlier in his career, Montreal and New Jersey, he was regularly over 100. So he might have done more of that earlier in his career.
Maybe earlier. But I just remember a guy who he would do that stuff.
And kind of skate away.
Yeah, and just wouldn't answer for it. Wizman says, hell yeah, Greg. This is when
about coming off the bench. I'm not sure the league would be on board with your recommendation.
No, they would probably be. Are they blocking my analysis? Stephanie says, I'm fine with it, Greg. You're going to cheap shot our players. You got to pay the piper. I don't know. I hope it doesn't come to that, guys. That's what I'm saying. Heather also says, how ridiculous that we even have to have conversations about getting so bad. The players need to come off the bench. Listen, that was my own opinion, but it's stemming from if the officials aren't going to police it, emotions get crazy in the NHL.
Yeah.
We have seen it. Emotions get crazy, especially if you attack one of the best players in the game. And the Lightning are already sensitive to Hagel, and also they've had a lot of injuries this year. So they're particularly sensitive to this. I mean, sensitive not in a, oh my goodness, just they're on edge about it. Like, you don't want to see your teammate get hit in the head multiple times. You just don't. K-Bay says it's sad we have to get this mindset, but yes, I agree, Greg. I mean,
you've got the fans all riled up, Greg.
I don't
Look
know.
at that.
I don't know. It just we were talking about it, and I'm thinking, what's going to stop this from happening?
I will go on the record. I'm going to take the other side of the ledger. I don't think there's any way we are going to see players come off the bench.
Will you mention me on the
altercation.
broadcast tonight and say,
if it happens, I'm like,
we were talking about it, and
Greg
said,
is Nostradamus. Greg needs to go play the lottery.
This is an interesting tweet. Chris says, Money Puck has Florida playoff chances at 25%. I mean,
and I am just spitballing here. I think that number is high.
Bulldog says 26.7 to make the playoffs for the Panthers.
I still think that's higher. I think it's less than 25%. You're giving them a 1 in 4 chance to go on.
Yeah, that's high.
Let's just say, like Phil said, let me look at their point total right now before I say anything more. All right, standings. Panthers have played 56 games. They have 61 points. Let's say they need to get to 100 points. Yeah. That's 39 points. It's basically 20 wins. Give them 19 wins, okay? 19 wins in their last 26 games. That is assuming that some of these other teams, I mean, you get to 100 points, you should get in the playoffs, but this year may be a little bit different. So the likelihood of them going 19-7 down the stretch, I think that is, and having one of these other teams drop off. Fact is, they need to leapfrog a bunch of teams. Yeah. Those stat people, they probably have it accurate. I'm just saying my gut tells me it's less than 25%. And to your point, what is the likelihood? You were talking about what do you have left in the first round? What do they have left for the stretch run? Can they dig deep again with all those road games? A stretch of 15 out of 21 on the road.
Look,
you can play well on the road and still lose. You got the back-to-back. You're facing a rested opponent.
What does history tell us?
Time zones. History tells us
it's hard.
They are way, way more likely to miss the playoffs this year than make it. But there's a chance.
Listen,
the question is, what is the chance?
Yeah.
Also, they haven't played well this year. I mean, I can give you their numbers, Greg. They're tied for 25th in defense.
Yeah.
3.29 goals allowed per game. They're underwater on 5-on-5 goal differential.
Sure.
They've allowed more 5-on-5 goals than they have scored. Gustav Forsling, who is one of the best defensive defensemen in the NHL, year in, year out, is a minus player this year. They're not having a good year. So it's not just they need to go on a run. They need to basically just play a whole heck of a lot better than what they've showed through 56 games. Do we believe they can do it? If they do it, they will have showed everybody that they are capable.
Yeah, and look,
but
they may.
The odds are very much against them. And this is what we talked about yesterday. You got these 5 teams in the Atlantic that are killing it.
Yeah. That's what hurts Florida. Usually you're like, all right, we're hanging around, and maybe if we're just a 7-2-1 run away from getting back into the playoff picture.
Mm-hmm.
That's not happening this year. You need to do a 14-2-2 because everybody else has had a huge run this year. And this year, nobody is allowing you to get up. Nobody anticipated Buffalo would be where they are, but Buffalo is like, no, we're not moving from this table.
Right.
And nobody else from this table looks like they're slowing down. And the Panthers are trying to get in, and everybody's kind of moving their seats over saying, no, you can't get in. And now they're going to have to go to the kids'
and as
table.
we get closer to the finish line, those teams dig in even more. It's like,
yes,
they do. You grab onto that spot. It's hard to supplant teams. Now, Columbus is on a great stretch under Rick Bowness. I think they're 9-1 in their last 10 or 10-1 in their last 11. They're still outside the wild card, but their path, they might be able to slip into the top 3 in the Metro.
You know, it's
Panthers don't have that option unless they leapfrog a whole bunch of teams, but that doesn't seem likely.
You know what's going to be really fascinating, and this is just we have no way of knowing. What if this becomes the norm? We talk about, the one benefits of having more talent in the league is more competitive games, but also teams who are at the bottom of the standings all of a sudden now end up competing. What if this becomes the norm, where you have such a competitive field? It's going to make the beginning of the year even more interesting. It's going to make getting off to good starts probably a bigger deal. And it's going to put a lot of pressure on the regular season, more so than we've seen in years past. Because if you get off to a poor start and everybody else is doing relatively well, all of a sudden you're like, this is going to be a tough year. Because we got to hope some teams fall.
I will, again, go out on a limb. I do not think we are going to see this anytime soon
as the norm. You think this is kind of a
really in the Atlantic? We're really talking about the Atlantic Division. I mean, the Metro. Yeah, there's some teams that have fallen off in the Metro. The Rangers have fallen off. The Devils have fallen off. I mean, it's happening. The Flyers are now. I mean, where are the Flyers going to finish? Maybe they'll make a push. Maybe they don't. It's really the Atlantic. And you look at these teams. The Buffalo Sabres going, 21-4-2. The Lightning going 18-1-1. I mean, the Bruins now have lost a couple in overtime, but, their January was outstanding.
Yeah.
I mean, these teams are going on these runs that, the Lightning have been a really, really good team for over a decade. And we're talking about 18-1-1 is one of the best stretches they've had in franchise history, right?
Incredible.
And so I think, I think I was seeing the Sabres. It's one of their best runs since the mid-'70s when they had teams that were going deep in the playoffs. They had a team that lost to Chiefs Flyers in the final. I think that same year was the only other year where they were rattling off a run like this. So I don't know that we can count on seeing this with the same number of teams all doing it. Now, is it possible that, Montreal is going to be a contender now because they've gotten some good young players and they're good now and they're going to stay good? Sure. Is it possible Buffalo now, they've kind of figured it out. They've got some really good players. Their decor is solid.
Yeah.
Luukkonen is a great goaltender. He's hurt right now, but, they're going to kind of hitch their wagon to him. Yeah, they could be up there. Sure. But does that mean that, these teams are going to be, going 15-2-1?
But it's been
building separation from teams that are just doing okay.
Nobody anticipated the old guard being competitive as much as they were this year. Even people thought Tampa Bay would take a step back.
Yeah.
Tampa Bay's been one of the best teams. But they've played a lot of hockey over the last 10 years. Most people, again, the way the cap is structured and the way the Lightning have given away some assets felt like potentially playoff team, but not one of the best teams. Mm-hmm. Well, that has changed this year. Nobody anticipated Pittsburgh staying in a playoff position. They're rebuilding on the fly. Washington, kind of the same thing a little bit. And the Bruins, I think, to their credit, have surprised a lot of people.
They have surprised a lot of people.
With how they
didn't
played.
Look good at the end of last year. And it's what did they do, really?
You're right.
Well, they made a coaching change. And clearly that has helped a lot.
What's interesting is Toronto and Florida have been the teams that have kind of had a hard time dealing with this.
Remember when we had Chris Johnston on, the Leafs were finishing up a horrendous homestand.
Yeah.
And he's like, as bad as the Leafs have been, they're going out to Western Canada and Seattle. And he's like, if they can win 3 of 4, he's like, I think they'll be about 4 points out of a wild card spot. So they did win 3 of 4.
Yeah.
They lost to Seattle, and then they won the other 3. So they're done now. They're heading into the break, and they are 6 points out of a wild card spot. So he was talking about, would they be sellers? And he's like, I think if management feels they're within 4 points, they're not going to look at themselves as sellers. They have the disadvantage, though, too, of a heavy, heavy road schedule down the stretch. I understand they just won 3 or 4 out in Western Canada and Seattle, but do it again and then do it again, right?
Let me get to this before we take a couple more. Tonight, enjoy some Refrom. Smooth, versatile, and outpouring at Benchmark International Arena. Order a Tropical Wave or a Lightning Mule and taste why fans are switching. Refrom is a premium craft Florida local rum built on authenticity, quality, and easy drinkability. Ask for Refrom by name. Go Bolts and enjoy responsibly. Game tonight still is 7:30.
Yes, another ESPN Plus game.
Yes. So we want to make sure everybody appropriately makes that adjustment on their schedule. This is from Michael again. He says, this is why Power Lunch is my favorite show. Great emotion. Honestly, it's not worth it for the Lightning to waste too much energy on a team. The Panthers, that won't even make the playoffs. Yeah, easier said than done. That's what we said.
They're going to, waste energy. They're going to compete.
Yeah, they are going to compete.
This is a rivalry game. The Lightning want 2 points. They want to finish this stretch on a good note. And look, the Lightning are in great position. I think it would take just as monumental of a collapse for the Lightning to miss the playoffs at this point, even as tight as it is. But the reality is they are coming out of the Olympic break with maybe the busiest schedule in the entire NHL. They are down in games played. So, yeah, that means they have games in hand. But if you look at games played, I'm actually going to look at the league. The Lightning have played the fewest games in the NHL. Now they're going to get to 55. There are a bunch of teams at 55. I'm not sure how many of those teams are playing tonight. But they are going to be tied for the fewest number of games played in the NHL, meaning they have the most games to play coming out of the Olympic break, 27. Ray Ferraro told me, he counted. He's like, the Lightning have 27 games to play over 50 days. So wherever they can get points, get them. Bank them.
Bank them,
Keep
baby.
doing it. Yeah.
Kyle says, Panthers at the kids' table. Like it makes me laugh. I mentioned that when we were talking about getting a seat at the big table. They're going to the kids' table.
The Panthers have played the Lightning very well here in Tampa. Yeah. Going back to the playoffs last year, they really outplayed the Lightning in that game in mid-December. Yeah. And the Lightning are going to have to figure out a way to do better against the Panthers, I think, here and specifically when they get a power play.
Fair. Pete says the NHL is the best parity of teams than any other major sports league.
This year.
Remember
there was that year a couple of years ago where there was such a gap between the top 8 and the bottom 8 in the East. That's the way it's structured. If you miss the playoffs, you have a chance to get blue chip prospects in the draft.
Anthony says Cooch is getting a lot more buzz around the league. A lot of talks about him being at McDavid and McKinnon's level and how we don't recognize it.
Well, it's hard to have a 35-game stretch where you produce 75 points, as Steve told us yesterday, and not catch people's attention.
If the Lightning... So, some of it depends on the finish. But again, I think most people thought that Colorado and Edmonton would be fighting tooth and nail to get to the Stanley Cup Finals or at least be two of the favorites. I didn't hear much of that talk when it came to the Tampa Bay Lightning. It wasn't that they weren't a playoff team. Mm-hmm. That was great. That was for sure. It was, are they one of the best teams, not only in the NHL, but just in the East?
Yeah.
I think with this type of streak, individual players become elevated for individual awards, and so do coaches, which is why you're seeing John Cooper be elevated to Coach of the Year. Mm-hmm. And I think you can make a very strong case, Cooch, MVP, and Vasi, Vezina. I mean, you could, and you would have very few people, I would think, Dave, around the league that would quibble with that.
Yeah?
I do. I actually think most people are looking at what the Lightning are doing and are shocked.
To me, Vasi is the front runner for the Vezina.
Has to be.
I mean, I don't know if other goalies, there have been some goalies that have really helped their teams this year. Like John Gibson's having a great year in Detroit. He is. Yep. And I think statistically, Sorokin is doing quite well for the Islanders. But, Vasi's numbers, I mean, yeah, he's given up 8 goals, in the last 2 games? Something like that. I mean, his numbers still, I think, if they aren't number 1 in the NHL in the main categories being goals against and save percentage. Vasi's number 1 in goals against. He's got 2.14. The next closest guy is Brandon Bussey, 2.24.
Yep.
So that's a 10th better, which is a lot. I'm just going to check save percentage. So Vasi is second behind Devin Cooley in Calgary, who barely qualifies. Now, the save percentage is closer, right? Vasi's at 918. And there's some goalies not that far behind him, like Blackwood in Colorado's at 916. So, like, Sorokin is having a good year. He's got really good numbers, but not Vasilevsky numbers this year. We'll see.
All right, today was a good show.
Yeah.
I don't have to say we got into some interesting topics. I know a little bit was more not philosophical.
Well, there's always a lot to talk about with Lightning Panthers, and we'll have a lot to talk about, I'm sure, tomorrow.
There were some hypotheticals in there, but I think we're all curious to see how tonight's game plays out based off of the history of these two teams. We will be on the airwaves tomorrow breaking this game down. And we better break it down because we are going to be off for a couple of weeks.
We're taking
for
2 full weeks off, so enjoy the
our
Olympics,
fans,
everyone.
Our fans are going to be upset about it, so make sure you get in on the action tomorrow.
We are not going to be providing any Olympic game insight.
That's right. We can talk about it when we
Find
come
your
back.
Olympic insight elsewhere.
That's right.
Please do.
But I will catch you tonight. Dave Mishkin.
See you tonight.
Great job as always. Jarrett Johnson, thank you. And Steve Ersnick as well. All of you for listening. We appreciate you guys. I am Greg Linnelli. You've been listening to Power Lunch on Lightning Radio.